YouTube live. Starting session transmission.
Is GoPro on?
Yep. I keep pressing it.
I wonder why it does that. It should just stay on.
To stay on. It said no screensaver and no auto turn off. Hello, YouTube. We are officially live.
YouTube live.
We're super excited. We're going to wrap up this little series we've been doing on the trembling fear of God. The chat is open. I don't know if we'll actually look at that.
We are not at that level, Nick. We are not going to pay attention to the chat because, for one, it's across the room.
That's true. Actually, I can't pull that up on my phone. I just haven't figured out how to do it.
We can't. Right now, we can't.
For those of you that have watched our videos before, notice we were in a different room, and we're going to try something new. I don't know how it's going to go, but basically, we're going to try a 3-camera little system, and I just don't know how it's going to go.
Yeah, so when Nick is talking, the camera should be on him, and then obviously when I am talking, it should be on me.
Yeah.
And then there is the dual.
And then we have the little studio here where we're both on camera, which is what you've been used to seeing if you've seen any of these. We have one viewer.
Oh,
someone's here.
Who's our viewer? You got to type in the chat.
Type in the chat.
We got time to see who our viewer is. Will you type in the chat?
I don't know.
Does he even know?
I've never actually used the chat, so.
I don't know. I think I saw we have 5 subscribers.
You have 5 subscribers.
Yeah. Which are probably all my friends, not yours.
Right. I've only told like 2 people about this.
I told everybody.
Actually, I told my wife, and I said, "Did you subscribe?" And she's like, "Not yet. I'm gonna see how it goes." I'm like, what the heck?
What?
So
that's not nice. My wife didn't either. She probably didn't even watch the video.
Probably. I don't. I think my wife heard it because I had it playing in the bedroom.
She did. She did follow us on Instagram.
Bailey did?
No, not Bailey.
Oh.
Amanda did. But
our viewer's gone.
Oh, that's terrible. But for those of you that don't know, we are on Instagram and Facebook now.
Official 2 Fish Podcast.
We're moving up. We got professional lighting. We got 3 cameras.
Yep.
Pretty soon we're going to have 3 mics because we got to pick up another bike if we're going to have a guest.
We are going to have a guest hopefully soon.
We're going to have to budget for that.
I have another mic. It's just not as nice as this.
Oh.
So.
Well, there we go.
For our first guest, the person we have in mind, a little piece of crap.
We're going to make him hold one the whole time.
We should do that just to see what he says. Oh, that would be funny.
That's terrible.
Okay, well, geez, see, it was left on you. This is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments at the end of the episode, did I do a good job at doing the camera thing? Or should we hire someone else to do it for us?
We can't hire anybody.
We don't have the budget to hire anybody.
We only got 5 subscribers. So they need to share it and tell other people to hit the subscribe button.
Yep. 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Stitcher, on wherever you're listening. If you're listening. I guess you're watching. This is only YouTube.
This is only YouTube right now.
Run through the cameras one more time.
You did put the card in, right?
Yes. We got 28 plus hours of.
Oh, that's going to be a long time for our one viewer.
Stay tuned for the whole 28 hours.
Shoot.
All right. Here we go. Ready?
I'm ready.
This is the 2 Fish Podcast, where we try to keep biblical truths simple. Your hosts, Nick Burt and Aaron Apple.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're really excited to wrap up this 3-part series on the fear of God. So if God is love, then why are we called to fear him? Mm-hmm. We have been examining this question in our 3-part series on fearing God. The phrase fear God appears in the Bible about how many times, Nick?
About 300 times.
So if it appears that many times, it has to be important. And we broke this down into 3 parts. So the first part was on the wrath of God or the trembling fear of God.
All right.
Part 2 was on the fear of the outcome or the fear of where God is taking me. And this last part will be on the reverence of God.
That's right. And the other two kind of build on, we're building blocks into the premise that we're going to be talking about tonight, ultimately. And we'll kind of dive into that here in a minute or so.
Yeah. So if we're just going to start over.
My mind just went gone.
I saw it.
Did you? I looked at the page and I'm like,
it's because I crossed this out. Cross that out. Don't read that.
Oh my goodness.
So we'll just read this. And then we'll get into our 2 verses for this week. And then we'll talk about these things. And then we'll get into Paul and Job and Peter and just let it flow.
Oh man, that let me see that thing. Oh man.
It's also small font. That's backwards, right?
Yeah, that's weird.
Now you know what my life is like with your freaking right-handed pens. Yeah, see, this is why I normally print the notes at work. For our YouTube live viewers, we've already worked on this for about an hour.
Yeah, technical difficulties and normal difficulties. This is bad. No other episode has been like this so far. This bad. Something's going on here.
That's a good thing.
So that's all me?
Well, this part was me.
Yeah.
Well, and then I figured since I still have a phone.
Okay.
Oh, the second. It's going to flow. A lot of this is you, but I'm going to have to not just let you talk and interject in there. But then obviously you don't have to like read it.
Yeah. I just have to. Okay. All right. Take 2. This is the Two Fish Podcast, where we try to keep biblical truths simple. Your hosts, Nick Burt and Aaron Apple.
Welcome back, everybody. We're excited to wrap up our 3-part series on the fear of God. We have been examining this series on fearing God. The phrase fear God appears in the Bible how many times?
About 300 times.
So if it appears that many times, it's got to be important.
Yep.
So as I said, we broke this down into 3 parts. The first part was on the wrath or the trembling fear of God. And part 2 was on the fear of the outcome or the fear of where is God taking me. And this last part is on our reverence fear of God.
Yeah. And the first 2 episodes in the series, we kind of talked about those 2 are building blocks into ultimately where we want to arrive when we think of this concept of fearing God, which is the reverence of God, which is where we're at tonight.
Right? And so if God is love, then why are we called to have that trembling fear and this reverence fear for him? 2 of our verses that we're pulling from today, the first one's Samuel 12:24. Only fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart, for consider what great things he has done for you.
Yeah. And, we love and respect God not because of what we want him to do for us, or we're not supposed to, but we want to love him and respect him and have reverence for him because of what he's already done for us. Did I wake up this morning? Yes, I need to have a reverence and a respect and a love for God. Is my family healthy? Yes, my family. We all woke up this morning. We all got to go do our days, and we came home. We're healthy. We're happy. I should be respecting and have a reverence for my God because of simple things like that. Right. It doesn't even have to be something that I asked for. It's just simple things like that.
So when I think of that respect, Nick, I tend to think of the old saying, "Respect your elders," elders. Do what they ask you without questioning them, because they've been around the block a time or two. And ultimately, God is much bigger than, that respect for your elders, but he knows what's coming around the corner for you, much like your grandma or grandpa would know. And you respect them, you respect their point of view.
Yeah. And how much more we should respect God, even more so than we respect those older people in our lives, like grandparents and people like that, because not only has he been there, but he created there.
Right.
Like he is there.
Yeah. And that is where the word reverence comes in. It is that almighty respect. It is a respect of almost a divine type of respect. It's,
right.
It's a whole new level of it.
Right. And another verse we talked about, Hebrews 12:28. Therefore, since we receive a kingdom which has not been shaken, let us show gratitude and offer to God pleasing service and acceptable worship with reverence and awe. When I think about this, having reverence, I think of having a relationship with God is not the same as having reverence for God. I have a relationship with my wife. We're equals in marriage. I have a relationship, let's say with you, Aaron. We're equals in this podcast.
Yeah.
We're doing this podcast thing together. I'm not on the same level as Jesus.
No.
I never will be. So while I need a relationship with him, it's not the same thing. And I should more so have respect, kind of like what you're talking about with the elders, but even more so because we're nowhere close on even playing fields.
Right. It is far greater than the word respect. So if you're going to have reverence for God, you're going to put him on top of everything. Mm-hmm. No matter what is going on in your life, like you are going to seek his guidance for whatever you are doing.
Yeah. And something on that with me is, I think with a lot of people is, even if we don't mean to do it or not, pride easily slips into our lives. Things are going good. You're happy. Whatever is going great at work, life is going great. That pride of, hey man, I can't be stopped. Like right now, things are good. Yeah. With that respect, with pride, you can't have respect for someone like you should if you are number one.
Yeah.
And, having pride is having a weakness. It really is. Or is having no weakness, I should say, which scripture says that in our weakness, he is made stronger. And without that respect and reverence for him, we end up being weaker because we're not asking for his guidance or asking for him to be in the situation in our lives.
Right. We're putting ourselves first, or even maybe our family. We're putting all kinds of things in front of it. We're letting
could be anything.
Pride get in the way of our walk. A good verse for that is 2 Corinthians 7. Therefore, since we have these promises, dear friends, let us purify ourselves from everything that contaminates body and spirit, perfecting holiness out of the reverence for God. So right there it is. Just get rid of whatever contaminates.
Yeah.
And a big thing, especially for men, is that pride. We take great honor in our accomplishments instead of giving that to God.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't do it.
Yeah.
God did it.
Yeah.
So
as we look through the series that we've been doing, in the first episode, we talked about having a trembling fear of God. And we talked about Job.
Yeah, so in that series, we talked about how Job had everything. He was a king almost. Like he had
it all.
He had it all. He had a great family. He had a great farm. People respected him. They looked up to him. And then one day this supernatural event happened, and that is where that trembling fear came in, because Satan and God more or less appeared in Job's life. Like they just wiped out everything he had, and then he got sick, and so he had this trembling fear of God. But ultimately, what got him through that is this reverence for God.
Yeah.
So if you read the story of Job, like it is this beautiful song and dance between God, Job, and the men around him,
who were his friends, kind of, and they didn't act like it in parts of this these passages, but
right, they were kind of throwing things in Job's face, like, what did you do wrong, Job?
Yeah.
And Job's kind of like, you've been with me. What? I haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I have had a reverence for God and respected him throughout this. And a great verse of that in Job is Job 4:6. So one of his friends, Eliphaz, kind of points this out. Doesn't your reverence for God give you confidence? Doesn't your life of integrity give you hope?
Yeah.
Ultimately, he ends up throwing that kind of in Job's face, like, you screwed up. That's why all this is happening. But Job continues to fight back that I didn't screw up. And later in Job 6:10, he says, at least I can take comfort in this despite the pain, because he's got all kinds of pain. Like at this point, he's in physical pain, and he's still mourning the loss of his family.
Yeah.
But he says, I have not denied the words of the Holy One. So,
which was kind of the bet between the devil and God, when the devil came to God and said, hey, I can get that Job guy. He would deny you. He would leave you, and you just have given him so much. He's living a prosperous life. Take that away, and he's going to deny you.
He's going to curse you.
And ultimately, that's why all this is happening. And Job is, I have not denied the words of the Holy One.
Right. And later in the story, Job has fought his friends. I think there were 3 or 4 of them. I forget how many there are, but he's fighting probably his closest friend. It's not described that way, but I have to speculate that, because who's going to come around you when you're this miserable? It's going to be those that have been around you the whole time, and they're telling him, you did wrong. You did this. This is why all that happened. Yeah. And Job just fought that the whole time. But it is the more I read it, the more beautiful that story is, really. But I look at Job 23:10 through 12. But he knows where I'm going, and when he tests me, I will come out as pure as gold. For I have stayed on God's path. I have followed his ways and not turned aside. I have not departed from his commands, but have treasured his words more than daily food.
Yeah.
That is the reverence for God.
Yeah.
Like
he turned that trembling fear that he had, that because of his situation, like we talked about before, he absolutely had every right to do that, to have that humanly feeling, but he turned that into having a reverence, having a that respect level, knowing that no matter what, if I cling to my God, I'm going to be okay.
Right. Yep. I'm gonna come out on top.
Yep.
Looking like gold.
Yeah.
And ultimately Job does. He gets everything back like twofold.
Two times what he had before.
Right.
And he was blessed because he stood with God. He stood on God. He was blessed.
Right. And in his times of trouble, like a lot of times I see guys, they're struggling with whatever's going on in their life, and they'll put away their Bible. They'll quit listening to podcast. They'll quit listening to what God wants them to hear, and they'll continue to just dwell in that misery of whatever that situation is, instead of digging in and turning to God and clinging to God.
Which is easy to do. It's easy to get there. It's a little harder to do what Job did. And or all respect, I think any one of us put in his situation would have maybe considered the alternative, because what he was going through is clearly harder than anything we've necessarily been through.
I'm gonna knock on wood, but I don't want to go down the path of Job.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that, but ultimately what Job did was, it is beautiful. Yeah. Like, I just can't picture myself having that willpower to do that.
So you kind of fear the outcome, which is what we talked in the second part of the series, having the fear of the outcome of what is going to happen when you ultimately surrender to God, and when you have that total fear or reverence of God, where that's going to take you. For example, we talked about you kind of being nervous about this podcast, about.
Oh yeah, this is, so the people that are probably watching on YouTube Live, or our first followers on Instagram and Facebook, that have been around me for a while, know that this is way out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't me.
Yeah.
Like,
for me, this isn't necessarily outside my comfort zone. I haven't done it like this, like we're doing, but for me, that we talked about, me would be saying, okay, God, full reverence, full respect, I'm all in. What do you want from me? And God saying, I'm going to send you out in the mission field. I used Africa as an example. Not that I have anything wrong with anything wrong with Africa. It's just that is leaving my comfort zone here in this little studio or in my daily life, and God saying, no, I got bigger things for you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the fear of the outcome of what could happen if I go all in. And we talked about Paul in the Bible.
Right. Paul was, I would kind of like the going to Africa thing. So Paul's going into these other cities, and as he's going into the churches of the time, he's preaching the good news, and he is gaining followers. He is building churches. He's bringing new believers, and the leaders of these communities don't like that.
Yeah.
Like, they're coming against it, and they're going and they're grabbing more or less the criminals of the time and getting them stirred up, and then they go attack Paul and like beat him, and they drag him out of the city. And the one example we shared, like, they thought Paul died, and they drug him out.
Yeah.
And the believers gathered around him, and he stands up and walks right back into the city.
Yeah.
So that's not really the fear of the outcome.
Yeah.
Paul never stopped, and God was with him the whole time. He had this reverence for God.
Yeah.
He knew that ultimately what has happened in my life is because of God, and I'm going to continue to fight for him, even if I have to take a licking.
Yeah. And be in a ton of pain. I mean, being stoned to what they thought was death, I'm sure was a little painful.
Right. So I think we compared that to like getting beat up by Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Because when we aired that episode, it was the
right after his fight. Yeah.
Day after his comeback fight.
Yeah. I feel like I'm all over the place.
I told you.
I can't focus.
So I'll pick up at this. It was his reverence, his undoubting faith, his all for God that helped him march forward, spreading the good news about our Lord and Savior, Jesus, and then you can jump into Peter. Yeah. So Peter was an example of this as well. On the other end of it, Peter displayed both.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
a new example of this. You can introduce it that way because we didn't talk about Peter in our other ones.
Yeah.
So YouTube Live, this is when we push the pause button.
Which we actually have only done it once.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah.
In another episode, once tonight. Hopefully not more than once tonight.
So we're kind of feeling attacked, just so you know, out there. We're fighting through this one, and we've talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
Like
actually, this was the one I felt the most prepared for, and my mind is just
right. We're kind of all over the place.
All right.
So I'll wrap up with, Paul had this reverence, fear, and it was an undoubting faith and an awe for God and what Jesus had done for him.
Okay. Ready? You kind of giggled at the end there, so I'm going to giggle at the beginning of this to hopefully seem it. Ready?
So, yeah, Paul had this reverence for God. He had an undoubting faith in this moment and his awe for what God had done for him. And this is what was helping him march forward during this. And he's spreading the good news of what the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ had done for him and what he can do for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of got on a tangent while you're just saying that in my mind. You talked about he went into these cities and these people, which, actually we're just doing that in Acts in our Bible study. These religious leaders in these churches, we'll call them, riled up people and basically caused chaos and got him thrown out. And in that circumstance, he got stoned. But I think they were afraid. If we look at Scripture, they were afraid of the outcome of Jesus. This is a guy that they've studied. They know that there's going to be a Messiah coming. Didn't necessarily look like what they thought it was going to. But when he starts riling up, when Paul or Peter, we'll talk here in a second, starts riling up their churches, their synagogues, I think they were afraid of what that was going to look like for them.
Right.
When everyone leaves, the super religious, I don't want to say doctrine, because doctrine's a good thing, but the strict 600 and some law of Moses and go to this new law that Jesus is going to set up here. I think they were afraid of what that outcome is going to look like for them.
Right. And part of that is they were getting rich off of that.
Yeah.
People are having to come into the churches and the synagogues and pay them money, right?
Yeah.
And offer sacrifices, and like everybody had to turn to them instead of turning to God.
Yeah. And Jesus came to make it super easy that they didn't have to go sacrifice or do whatever they had to do. They could go straight to the Father, which makes it super, super easy.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately they were afraid of to look at it simply like we do, they were afraid for their job position because their job position's getting taken away.
Right.
And so ultimately that's why they end up riling people up to beat and throw Paul out. That's the whole reason. But I don't know, that just popped in my mind when we were just talking. So
yeah, that's great. I'm glad that popped in there.
Yeah. Another example that we kind of talked about for this episode, as a good example of taking those first two, which are natural things to feel, trembling, fear, and outcome, and turning them into reverence was our boy Peter. In John 18, Peter feared man in that moment more than he feared God. He had just eaten with Jesus, the Last Supper. He had just prayed through the night with Jesus in the garden, and Jesus said at the dinner table, "Hey, you know what? You're going to deny me 3 times." And Peter said, "There's no way that I'm going to do that. No possible way. I am with you 100%."
Yeah.
which, is commendable for him to think, but
that's typical Peter. He's 100%er.
Which kind of goes into what we were talking about, pride. Like he had the pride to know that, no, this is
what I'll do.
Which, good for him to have that, but just he went a little too far. And Jesus said, no, I need to take you down a notch to make sure you. So in John 18, when Jesus has been arrested, he's going into trial. Peter's sitting there, and people start coming to him and saying, hey, you're one of those guys. And he's like, no, that wasn't me. And he did it 3 times.
Right.
And as soon as he did it the 3rd time, he looked over, he heard a rooster crow. He looked over and looked straight in Jesus' eyes, and he's like, crap.
I get it.
Crap. I had that trembling fear of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me? And the outcome of, I'm going to end up hung on a cross too.
Right.
And he gave in to those, which is easy to do. It's natural to do. But what is kind of, I think, gives us hope in the situation is the fact that he turns it around. He turns it around from at that low point where he could have been like Judas. He could have said, you know what? I screwed up, thrown the money back on the temple and said, I'm done, and hung himself.
Right.
Rather than do that, Peter repented. He saw what he did. He saw that he was afraid of what was going to happen to him. And he ultimately had changed his perspective into a more reverence for God rather than fearing man.
Right. He saw in that moment, when he looked into Jesus' eyes, like he saw everything that he has spent a couple of years with Jesus at this point, right? Yeah. Like he saw the miracles. All of that just like all of a sudden clicked. And he was like, oh man.
Yeah.
I get it. Jesus did all of this for me.
Yep.
And he goes on to share that with thousands of people.
Yeah, and like Jesus said, you're going to be the rock that I build my church on. And ultimately he was, but he had to get to that point where rather than give in to those first 2, he can say, God, I'm all in. I have a fear of you.
Right.
Which is a good place to be.
Yeah.
It's something we should strive to. We should have hope that if Peter can do it, we can do it. But we should strive to turn towards all in, not worrying about the trembling, not worrying about the outcome. All in. God is bigger than anything we got going on.
Right. The other, it just popped in my head.
Go for it.
Not to fear what people think.
Yeah.
And I think in America, like we want to keep up with the Joneses, which is part of that pride.
Yeah.
But we fear what people think about us, and we're afraid to share the news on Facebook. We're afraid to tell our spiritual walk with one another. Guys struggle sharing emotions, period.
Yeah.
So, I think that's part of that fear we got to lay down, that pride, and have that reverence for God. That I'm gonna share my story. I'm gonna jump on a podcast.
Yeah. Even if it maybe makes it uncomfortable when a coworker listens to the podcast that you didn't think was going to listen to it, and maybe you got to have a conversation at work. But
yeah,
there you go. That's kind of what we're called to do.
Yeah, and you got to have that trust and that reverence for God that He is going to be with you in that, and even if you get it a little bit wrong, as long as you're still worshiping God and trying to follow God, like He's going to correct you.
Yeah.
If you're on the wrong path.
Yeah.
But if you step away from that, He's not going to.
Yeah. And not to say that things are going to be easy when you do step into that, but you have Him to rely on. You have Him to fall back on.
Right.
And ultimately that's
we look at this podcast, and it took us 6 months to get to this point.
6 months.
Yeah, luckily our wives and our kids have been patient with us in this and are coming alongside us. And but yeah, it's not going to be easy when you step into the path of what God wants you. Like, it isn't designed to be an easy walk.
Yeah.
There will be troubles. There will be
Yeah.
peaks and valleys. I mean, so,
Yep.
but the peaks are really great, and sometimes the valleys suck. But if you continue to follow God through those, you're going to find joy in them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Nick, we're kind of at the end of our first series here.
Ooh, it's been good.
Right.
It's been good. It's definitely been good to do some research and some thought into this. I know for me, I haven't really 100% thought about it, what the fear of God looks like, but it's been kind of nice to break it down, simplify it, keep it simple,
Yeah.
and look at it in 3 different perspectives, and ultimately to guide to the one we should ultimately have.
Right. When I came across this, I was shocked. It does vary on the different versions, but the fear of God is in there like 300 times.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's in there that many times, it is really important. And ultimately, we are called to fear God, but it's more than a trembling fear or a fear of what the outcome is. It is this reverence for God. It is a love and an awe for God and everything He is doing in your life, the good, the bad. If you're like Job and he's testing you, like, stick to what God has commanded you to do.
Yeah.
And two of the greatest commandments, Exodus 20 verse 3 in the Old Testament, the first commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me.
Yeah. Which is pretty straightforward when you just, and, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and I don't even think it means necessarily, I think what he's saying is, gods, Baal, or any gods like that, but I think insert anything into there. Are you putting it above Jesus, which is easy to do? I'll be the first one to admit that's sometimes hard for me. I put other things in front of God or in front of my relationship with Him, and it ends up becoming an idol.
Right. Money.
Yeah. I mean, lots of things.
Your
time.
Belongings.
Yep.
Yep. Man, your family, whatever. Put God first.
Yeah.
That is what that is telling us.
Yeah. And then in the New Testament, Matthew kind of makes it even, Jesus in Matthew says it kind of another way, but basically saying the same thing in Matthew 22, verse 37. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment.
Right.
It kind of covers what we just were saying with putting other things in front of Him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's not just your heart. It's not just your mind. It's your soul.
Yeah.
Like that part of that one really sticks out to me. Yeah. Love them with your soul. Like, that's to me, we talk about that being like the deepest part of your body. So that is our 3-part series on the fear of God.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook as well. And
we're on YouTube Live. We're actually YouTube Live right now. So if you're seeing this, if you're watching this on a later date, go back and watch, go back and watch these episodes. Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Two Fish Podcast, where we try to keep biblical truth simple. Catch us on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Have a great night.
I muted our mics. The content was good. Thank you for being here and watching that horribleness.
It was great.
But the content was good. The podcast should be good. So go on to Spotify. Go on to those other things, Apple. Listen to it there. Give us a 5-star review or whatever.
Yeah, but if you want a good laugh, just keep watching the YouTube.
Keep watching these. That was not good. It was. It's going to be great. I think content-wise, I think we're right. We did exactly what we meant to do. So
yeah, we didn't have our wrap-up planned out very well.
Oh, man. I think
kept waiting for you to push the button.
We even talked about it, and I'm like, oh.
That's all right. We did good. I think, hopefully people like us and share it and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And these will go live on all those platforms.
My goal is to either later tonight, have a couple up, or tomorrow is my goal. But we'll see on that process. I haven't done that process since before. I know a couple of them are really easy. A couple of them you have to do a couple of little extra things. But within the week.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we're going to have another episode next week if you want to be here live. I don't know what we're doing yet. And
I think it's going to be on church.
Church, we can do that.
I don't know.
That's fine.
Or maybe we'll have our first guest.
We can do
next
that.
Week.
I mentioned it to him on Marco Polo the other day, and then I said something again, but he kind of was like, I'm like, all right, well, whatever.
He doesn't want to do it, huh?
I don't know. There I am, stuck again. Ugh.
It's probably because you have a Samsung.
That's not why. And then actually, it kind of corrected it there. It was all fish-eyed.
No. Probably because I'm ugly.
Like you could see all these papers here.
Oh, I moved them.
No, it was like you could see the whole desk here.
Oh,
it was kind of weird.
Like it changed.
Yeah.
It changed views. You
Or
probably
something.
pushed the wrong button.
I didn't.
I bet you hit the button above it one time.
That's the.
Oh,
I don't know.
maybe there's only one button. There's only one button. You couldn't have hit the wrong one. That was a fight, though. That was a struggle.
Those other two were not as bad as that.
Wow.
I don't know.
We must have been. We were either doing one of two things, Nick. We were either spitting truth or God didn't like what we were saying.
And we fought through it anyway. No, content was good. Content was good. It just was.
It was. I think you felt too scripted.
Did I? I think I did too. My mind, and I this is the one I felt most prepared for. I don't know why, but I did. But then when we started this, I'm like,
I think it's because I challenged you to put too many notes in.
my brain is like fudged. I don't know.
Maybe I scared you earlier when I told you I felt like this was going to be a battle.
I don't know. It's probably because I was running around trying to get this whole thing set up.
We
I
did
should have never done this.
We did a lot more. We got lights and cameras. and
This was my evening, like not last night, but Sunday night and last night before I went. This was my evening, trying to set this nice little new studio up so that you viewers could look at something a little better than my storage room in the back room. So,
because this is about God and then you, the viewer. This is not about Nick and I. We try to make ourselves look good for you.
Yeah.
And sound good for God.
Obviously, I can't make me look that good. So, I tried. I don't know. There's a couple other things I want to move around here, but probably not going to mess with it because at least not the day before or the day of. Right before you came over, I'm like, I was waiting on a cord. Are you good? We're just keep talking.
Well, we can just keep talking.
I was waiting on a cord to get Aaron's camera set up.
Hey.
Which I'm still not. I wish it was a little. I'm going to move it. It needs to be like that. But the problem is when it's like that, it's a little more prominent in the screen here.
What if we shifted to the other side of the table?
I think what it needs to be is back here.
Oh,
there.
Yeah.
And zoomed in.
Hang it from the ceiling.
I tried to do that with the big camera, and then I was afraid it was going to fall. Because it's a heavy camera.
Fear of the outcome.
Fear of the It's my son's camera. Who cares if it falls and breaks? So, yeah, but Amazon, like 20 minutes before you should, 10 minutes before you showed up with that cord actually this cord to get your camera going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I need to take a shower, but I need to get this camera going. Screw the shower. So I ran downstairs real fast, got it all plugged in, and then your wife got here first.
Yeah.
And then I ran back upstairs. And I'm like, hi. And Bailey was like, I thought you were in the shower. And I'm like, I was not. I was going to be, but I. So it's Amazon's fault for taking too long to deliver my package.
Hey, it's set up now, though.
Yes.
It's just minor tweaks at this point. And then, whatever our next subject's going to be.
All right.
Which we have a couple. We have a couple picked out. We just got to figure out which one.
Do we keep this rolling? Because we need to redo that other one?
We can.
Or should we stop this and start a new one? Or not do it at all?
I mean, what do our viewers want? Are there any viewers?
There are 0 viewers. We had one. It was either, I'm going to guess it was either Kyle Martin.
Might have been Nate Hirschberger.
Oh, could have been Nate Hirschberger.
Maybe we shouldn't say their name.
Yeah, you're probably right. Well, they're the only ones that are going to watch us for a while, so we'll be all right.
Yeah.
Help us out.
We have fan clubs.
Send this to your friends. Let people watch this. Actually, probably should send them to the actual podcast first and let them listen to it because it won't be as bad. But for a good laugh.
Good laugh. Watch it the YouTube version.
Yep. All right, we're going to sign off this right now. We might be back here in a little while with another video to do another episode. So thank you for being here. What else do I say?
Yeah, thanks for being here. We happy you watched our video, and we're going to get off of here and start another one.
Do I end it with this now?
Yeah, thanks for tuning in today to the Two Fish Pet Podcast,
I should have
where
done
we
it
try
before.
to keep biblical truth simple.
No, I can't take it. All right. Thank you.
I like how I say pet.